Right-wing terrorists storm U.S. Capitol. Yeah, pretty much anyone who pays attention to politics is going to be talking about this. I don't like politics. I don't like paying attention to it. I hate it, in fact, but an informed populace is a safer populace. And the more knowledgeable all of us are, the safer we all are. And this story makes that point very clear, because there are about 75 million uneducated voters in this country right now. And because of the events of January 6th, 2021, some of those ignorant voters are now in jail. So I wrote out a big thing here. I have several pages to go through. Don't worry, the text isn't very small. But I'm going to be reading off of this because there's just too much here for even me to remember. So yeah, if you see me just looking down, well, that's why. Okay, so January 6th was the day of the certification of the 2020 election. The election in which Joe Biden triumphed over Donald Trump. Donald Trump lost the election, thankfully. However, he spent every day since the election was found to be in Biden's favor trying to overturn the results of the election. And January 6th was no different. So certification day was a very special day, a big important day. It was the day that if the Republican Party wanted to en masse attempt a coup, well, they could have. However, they, including Vice President Mike Pence, decided to actually obey the law for once. Shocking, I know, right? Trump had tried to get Pence to overthrow the election, to basically make Trump dictator of the United States. Very mustache twirly. And Pence wouldn't do it. He said he didn't have the constitutional authority, and that's true, he doesn't. So on this day, January 6th, Donald Trump held a rally. A bunch of his cult-like followers had made their way to the U.S. Capitol, spending the night in tents and sleeping bags, so that they could partake in a terrorist attack upon the United States of America, the country that they pretend and profess to love. Yeah. What they did was they attempted a coup. And what they did is illegal. It's sedition. Joe Biden was democratically elected. The party that pretends to care so much about democracy and about the law continuously and endlessly violates that law. All of our laws. During this rally, Trump told his brainwashed followers that they, not including him, had to take back, quote unquote, our country, and had to do so through strength, read force. He said this to a group of people whom have a proclivity for anti-government sentiments. They hold anti-government views. They went there specifically to try and stop and overturn the certification and therefore the election. How much do they really care about this country? They don't. So, as Trump is continuing to foster and incite violence in this frothing at the mouth group of ignoramuses, he also starts to badmouth Mike Pence, because Pence won't throw the election for him. Pence won't elect him as dictator. The crowd then started chanting, "Kill Mike Pence. Mike Pence must die." While, chanting many other different things. Even though Trump lost the election to Biden, he's still, to this day, bitching about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is long gone. She's 4 years gone. And these idiots still chant, "Lock her up, lock her up." For what, assholes? Lock her up for doing the very things that you're planning on doing? That you assholes are doing? That the right wing is doing? Projection. That's what they call that. So, Trump ends his speech and motions to the Capitol, giving his followers permission to storm said Capitol to overturn the democratic election, which he lost. So hundreds of them start making their way to the Capitol. Now, their intention was clear. They were chanting, "Kill Mike Pence." What did the cops do? I mean, we've seen how the cops treat protesters, how they treat anti-government protesters. Oh wait, those were just anti-police brutality and corruption protesters, right? If they're psychotic right-wing protesters that want to overthrow the government and the election, then I guess they're okay, because the cops didn't really do anything. You would have thought that the cops were out in force, but they weren't. Just goes to show the differences in how the police treat right-wing Nazi Confederate flag-waving protesters and peaceful, non-violent protesters whom are just trying to make the world a better place. Yeah. BLM protesters got their heads caved in. They got tear gassed. And in one case, I believe it was in Seattle, a child, a 3-year-old toddler, was tear gassed. Police slashed the tires of people whom they suspected were protesters. Anti-police brutality protesters. They slashed their tires. Police tried to run over with their patrol cars, which the taxpayers paid for. They tried to run over and they assaulted protesters with their patrol cars. That's how the police treat quote-unquote left-wing protesters versus right-wing protesters. Right-wing protesters bring assault rifles. They always instigate violence. I've seen video of a Nazi protester firing at a black man in the presence of police, including non-white police. And that man was just allowed to leave the area. Wasn't stopped, wasn't beaten, Wasn't shot. Yeah. Well, in this particular case, the police not only didn't stop these right-wing terrorists, they opened the barricades for them, giving them access and therefore permission to illegally storm the U.S. Capitol. While this was going on, another set of protesters, remember, chanting, "Kill Mike Pence," and I'm sure kill all these Democrats, they started erecting gallows so they could hang the Vice President of the United States. Yeah. Trump, President of the United States, incited his cultists, his cult terrorists, to kill his own Vice President. I think we've all been cursed with living in interesting times. So, the other protesters, obviously in a coordinated effort, began to search the Capitol, the building that they had stormed at the behest of Donald Trump and the Capitol Police, whom, by the way, have no civilian oversight, because the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., is not a part of the United States. Interesting, huh? It allows them to skirt all kinds of laws, doesn't it? Yeah. So, they're searching the building, looking for Mike Pence. I guess he was with his family, too. I'm sure they would have hanged them as well. I mean, these assholes don't care about hurting anybody. You know, I'm sure they would have no problem hurting children. But they were also searching for Democratic senators. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And, yeah, a pro-Trump terrorist who was there, who also stormed the building, told the New York Times that a Capitol police officer directed them, the terrorists, to Chuck Schumer's office. A police officer with no civilian oversight directed the terrorists to Chuck Schumer's office. Yeah. I think that's why people are protesting the police. Because what happened to these, to Mike Pence and to these Democratic senators has been happening to us, the American public, for decades. Frankly, for even longer than that, but let's be honest, we really only care about the last 50 or 60 years. Okay, so that's how the terrorist gained access to what you would think would be a heavily fortified building. Cops just let them in. Well, some of the cops. So, after the fact, in a conference call, many of the Democrats who were there, they had talked about how they had talked about how difficult the building is to navigate, even for people who, work there. And so they realized that these people could not have found their offices um, without the help of people who knew where those offices are. And as was the case with that one guy, that one cop, he told him exactly where Chuck Schumer's office was. In one case, a senator was holed up in a room that was not marked with his name, and the terrorists showed up there. Obviously, they were directed by the police or other officials who knew exactly where that senator was. Yeah, this was an attempted coup, if you haven't already figured it out. So, what was Trump doing while all of this was going on? While his cultist terrorist followers were attempting to overthrow the government. Well, Trump was doing the same thing. He was pressuring officials in states that he lost to quote-unquote find votes to steal the election. No surprise, but that is exactly what Donald Trump was doing while those people were out killing people and physically attacking and hurting people and trying to kill senators and kill the vice president and all this stuff. That's what Donald Trump was doing. Yeah. Because of Donald Trump's inciting of this violent coup, 5 people are dead, including one cop. The rest of the dead people were some of Trump's followers. I guess you can't overthrow the government without breaking a few eggs, huh? Yeah. You think Trump cares about those 5 dead people? Well, let's see. He's got, what, over 300,000? What is it, 400,000 at this point? Dead Americans because of his inaction in dealing with the coronavirus. He doesn't take any responsibility for that. Something tells me he doesn't care about these 5 people, some of whom were his followers. Yeah. That's always the case with these authoritarian dictators. And that's what Trump is. He's a wannabe dictator. The Democrats, having realized that the terrorists could only gain access to the building with the help of police and other governmental officials, they want to start an investigation into the Capitol Police and their collusion with these terrorists. Notice how quickly the Democrats act when the police turn against them. Where were they when BLM was getting tear gassed? When BLM was getting their heads smashed in? When they were losing limbs? When they were being shot with rubber bullets? When they were being beaten? When they were being mutilated? When the police were arresting the press? When the police were arresting just anybody who happened to be on the street? When the police were slashing people's tires? When the police were running people over with their fucking patrol cars? Where were the fucking Democrats then? Where were all of these investigations? Where was the action? Why wasn't Trump impeached then? Again? He incited violence against the protesters. Peaceful protesters. Yeah. Yeah. Fact is, none of these assholes really give much of a fuck about any of us. But one group of them, because they want to continue to be elected and they want to differentiate themselves from the outright fascists and racists and bigots, the other guys, the Democratic Party, have a slightly razor-thin, slightly better record on human rights abuses and on human rights and civil rights. In fact, all of the things that the Democrats achieved, all of the positive social progress and change that the Democrats did succeed with in the Obama era, Trump immediately, upon entering office, tried to undo and undermine, including trying to prevent homeless shelters from accepting trans women. Yeah, that's something that hits close to home. So, just reading here. Yeah. So, also, it's pretty clear that this was a very coordinated effort, at least to some extent. A lot of these right-wing websites and online forums, there had been a lot of planning. Now, the planning wasn't highly coordinated, but everybody that went there basically had the same thing in mind. Overturn the election, overthrow the government, attempt a coup, try to install their Fuhrer as a permanent dictator, kill people, bomb people, shoot people, probably rape people if they could get away with it. Basically everything, all the evil shit that the Republican Party is known for. I've never met a good Republican personally, or I've never seen one on TV or on the internet or anything. They're all fucking evil assholes. That's why they vote Republican. And that's in part, it's like this, the snake eating itself. You know, it's this constant circle. You know, the Republicans go, oh, well, you need to be a bigot. And so the dipshit right-wingers, voters, they're like, oh, okay, we'll be bigoted. And then that in turn makes the Republicans get even more bigoted. And you know, the Republicans are always pointing to an enemy. People whom are usually, you know, well, powerless. Yeah, again, that's something that dictators do. That's something that Adolf Hitler did, very specifically. So also, while all this stuff was going on, bombs were planted at the DNC and RNC. Trump called these right-wing domestic terrorists patriots. Yeah. Donald Trump and his followers and the Republican Party have a very different definition of the term patriot than myself. So, as a result of all this violence, as a result of an attempted coup, Twitter did something that they should have done fucking years ago. They banned Trump from their platform. Yes, Twitter actually banned Trump from their platform. A little late, huh? 5 people dead, hundreds of thousands of people dead because of Trump's inaction with the coronavirus. mutilated protesters from Black Lives Matter protests, on and on and on and on and on. All the people whom have been the anti-Trump protesters who've been at his rallies, who've been assaulted by his cultist followers at the direction of himself, Trump. And just now they're just as he's days away from being out of fucking office, just now they've banned him from their platform. Wow. So progressive. Yeah. So they stated specifically that he was banned to prevent further incitement of violence. Again, a little late. About 5 years, 6 years too late. Yeah. The President of the United States was banned from Twitter for trolling. And this is how far the office of the presidency has fallen. This is how tarnished that office now is. See, there was a time in the United States when the American people trusted the government. I think naively, but through a number of different fascistic authoritarian actions, over time, the American people became more and more cynical, and they became less and less trusting of government. Things like Watergate and all the other scandals, and on and on and on. So now, I mean, think about what this does to people, and think about what all of this corruption has done. It's led us to this point where you have one group of people whom are being lied to. They're being told there's corruption when there's no corruption by a guy who's committed nothing but corruption. And they believe him because he spews anti-government and anti-democratic sentiments. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. But think about how little future generations are going to trust the government. And with good reason. But one needs to be able to discern the true corruption from the falsely accused corruption, falsely stated corruption. And unfortunately, thanks to Reagan and his defunding of the education in the United States, we had a lot of really stupid fucking people who obviously and clearly, at least 75 fucking million of them, can't discern the difference between truth and lies. They don't bother to actually read more than one story, or look at look for facts, or look at the people and the places from which they're getting their information. They just consume it and then vomit it out at all of us. So the President of the United States has been banned for trolling and for inciting a coup. So this led Nancy Pelosi to tell the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff not to let Trump have the nuclear codes. Wow. That's a first as far as I know. His staff has been directed to not follow his orders. The President of the United States is being circumvented because he's insane. Right move. We wouldn't want Trump launching a nuclear attack against the states that voted against him. But it's a scary scenario, isn't it? The President of the United States is so deranged that even people within his own party, within his own White House, are circumventing him, are not listening to him. So one would think and one would hope that all of the things that Donald Trump has done over the past 5 years, I'm including, his time as, where he's vomiting shit on Twitter and YouTube and whatnot. And he was also banned from Facebook and I think YouTube to some extent. I don't know. I know that they also kind of did a half-assed version of banning. But I think at least, 82 million of us have learned a lot from these past 5 years. We've always been told and we've always thought it can't happen here. We couldn't possibly have a coup here. That's what happens in other countries, shithole countries. That's what happens in South America. That's what happens in countries where the majority of people are non-white, right? That doesn't happen to white countries. Yeah. I have news for you. Yeah. White people got a lot of blood on their hands, historically. I hope that the takeaway from all of this is that it can happen here. It's a real possibility. And as such, we must plan for that possibility. And so I ask, what safeguards is the government going to enact to prevent another wannabe dictator like Trump? Are they going to require presidents to take mental acuity and sanity tests? No. They've kind of done that, but Trump, as he did with his physical examination, simply found a doctor who was crooked enough and paid him off. And the doctor wrote a glowing health exam, health review. Where are the safeguards against that? Where are the safeguards against the President of the United States just paying people off to take the tests for him or to mark the tests as passed? Obviously, we need these safeguards. What is the Democratic Party? What is the non-psychotic, what is the less psychotic, less asshole-ish, less authoritarian Republicans going to do? What are they? Well, it doesn't matter. What are states going to do? What is the government as an entity that exists to serve us? What are they going to do to ensure our safety, to ensure that we never again get a wannabe dictator who attempts a coup? Probably nothing. Call me a cynic, but I've been around long enough and seen enough to pretty much have the game figured out. It's the same reason that the Democrats didn't do anything to really help Black Lives Matter protesters. Same reason that local governments didn't really do much to help Black Lives Matter protesters. Same reason that all of these governmental entities conspired to harm, and in some cases to attempt to murder and to murder Black Lives Matter protesters. They're all authoritarians. But they all want to be in charge. So when somebody else puts their lives in danger, oh, suddenly it's time to do something. We got to launch investigations. We got to impeach the president. We got to do the, we got to get him out of office. But when it's us getting beaten down by the government, suddenly everybody's busy. Yeah. For most in government, Trump's authoritarianism is the feature, not the bug. That is why they do nothing when the governmental machine, the police, steamroll the fuck over us. So what is the world at large going to do to prevent another Trump? What are they going to do to prevent the United States from being taken over by right-wing authoritarians? I mean, yeah, we're the biggest bully on the block, but this whole time I was hoping that the sane individuals in governments throughout the world would get together and say, America, we like you, kind of, but you need to knock this shit off. They're worried about getting nuked or just bombed or the leaders of these countries, they're worried about getting bumped off by the United States government. So, yeah, they're probably not going to do anything, but what should they do? What will they do? What are we going to do? What are we going to demand? Because after all, this government is supposed to be by us and for us. Even though the majority of people that end up in government are rich, because they have rich friends who can give them lots of money so they can make lots of ads where they lie and they can con a bunch of stupid people into voting for them. And yeah, the system is rigged. Trump and his dipshit followers have been saying that for years. The system's rigged. Yeah, it is. But it's not rigged against Trump, against the Republicans, against these white Nazi terrorist right-wing assholes. It's rigged against us, against good people, decent people, people who go out into the world and say, what can I do today to help someone else, to make someone feel better, to make someone feel nice, to just not be an asshole? So what are we going to do? What are you going to do? You have power, you have a voice. Admittedly, not a lot. But the thing about political office is that, for the moment at least, the politicians have to be rehired every few years. So, if enough of us hold these spineless Democrats and these authoritarian Republicans, if we hold their feet to the fire, if we hold them accountable, if we make demands, if we get together collectively and say, we don't want any more coup attempts, we don't want any more police brutality, we don't want this, we don't want any of this shit. If we let them know that and say, look, I'm not going to vote for you again, asshole, if you keep just letting this governmental machine steamroll over us. I don't know, I mean, that happens a lot. They get a lot of petitions and, you know, people signing stuff, but then, you know, it doesn't really seem to do much. I don't know. But what are you as an individual going to do? If you look at politics now and you say, it's a cesspool and it's awful and the people in government suck, you know, if you go out every day and you think, well, you know, you're happy-go-lucky and you go, well, hey, you know, I'm going to have a nice day and I'm going to be nice to other people, well, maybe consider running for office. Local government, and maybe move your way up. It's obvious from this coup attempt that we need good people, human beings, who are not owned by corporations in government. The reason that we have so many problems is because our government has been taken over by corporations, by rich people who don't give a fuck about us. We need to do what these Nazi assholes have done to police departments across the United States. We need to infiltrate the government. Not through sedition, not through, you know, coup attempts, not through force, but we need to go out there and campaign and be the change. Cliche, I know, but we need to do it ourselves. We need to replace those crusty old rich assholes. We need to take the government over. We'll just do it peacefully and democratically. A lot less chance of being arrested that way. Sorry to say that, you know, that has to be a constant concern for left-wingers. Not really for right-wingers, because right-wingers can just execute people summarily in the streets and get away with it, murder cops. Hey, it's A-okay. Government doesn't seem to care much, except for, you know, when those terrorists come for them, you know, for the Democrats or for the Republicans or whomever. Yeah. But we really need to take over the government by running for political office. And we need to ensure the integrity of the government by refusing to take corporate donations. It's the only way we can get change, is by getting money out of politics. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Yeah. Hopefully. We've won the Senate. We have Congress. We have the office of the President. Hopefully, we can get something done, something positive for once. But we need to be as hard on the Democrats as we have been on the Republicans. It's the only way to force them to enact positive change. There is a bright side here, and we can learn from this. Anyway, bye-bye.